Welcome back to part 4. We're going to finish up the details on this little tulip canvas, and I'm going to reinforce the whites along the edges of the tulips. Again, I'm using cool white and just a small round brush or liner brush to do this. We just want these very strong whites to be the sunlight reflecting off the edges of these shiny tulip petals. We're also going to use this cool white to reinforce some of the texture in the leaves. You can add some along, like this. This leaf we're only seeing the very edge of it, so I'm doing a strong white highlight along the one edge of it. Any place where I want just a little pop of light, I'm using this little round brush in the white just to add that little light value. This also helps to clean up the edges of any leaves that aren't quite clean enough. Tulip leaves are very sort of stiff and spiky. Now, as I was working this original drawing, I decided I needed some extra leaves here in this lower foreground. Now, these are on your drawing, so you won't have to do this later, but I just thought we needed to break this up a little bit, so I'm sketching these in with white, just the little tips of some leaves. I want these stems to show up a little bit more, so I'm reinforcing the highlight on the edge of them. I want to add a little more color to the background, so I'm using a small round brush and some of the electric pink. You want to mix some water with it so it's sort of transparent, and I'm just kind of dabbing this in across the top of the canvas to pull that pink color and the tulips up. You want to keep this kind of soft and sort of transparent, so just work that color out a little bit. Also going to add a little bit of the Tuscan red. A little bit of water mixed into it to make it a wash, and dab this down, starting a little below where you had the pink. Kind of merge the two together a little. You can soften it down into your darker background colors. And we're doing this again to get the tulip colors into the background so the two have some harmony to them. You don't want totally different colors in the background than you have in the foreground. The whole painting will look better if you kind of repeat colors here and there. I'm going to add a little in some of these darker areas. It won't show up quite so much, but your eye will still pick it up a little bit, those little red tones. That one little patch of pink is just too strong, so I'm going to go up here and work a little bit of that red into it and soften it down. Now with like a 3/8 or ½ inch flatter angle brush, I'm going to float some shadows in around the tulips on the leaves. And I'm using our blueberry color because we have a lot of blueberry in the leaves. This will be a nice cool shadow. So any place that I just want to set those leaves back a little bit, I'm going to float some of a darker value in there. You could also use a little bit of the greens, or mix a little bit of the burnt umber into it. You just want a darker value than what you're floating the shadow on. You can even add a touch of black to it if you need to. You keep these very transparent. You want just a little paint so they don't get too harsh. One more time I'm going to go back and strengthen some of the white highlights. As I always say, once you put a color down and it dries, sometimes it's not quite as intense after it dries as it was when you first put it in. So that's the reason why you sometimes have to go back and just go over areas. They merge just a little bit too much with the color below. This little part of the petal isn't really a crease. It's more of just a little ripple. So I want to soften that back down a little bit so it's a roll versus a crease in there. So I'm just adding a little bit of our deep reds back into it. And soften it on this side with just a little bit of the red mixed with the pink. This back tulip's darker, but I still want to lighten the highlights a little bit, so I'm using the electric pink color. At this point, you should be stepping back and looking at the overall picture and just looking to see if anything needs to be adjusted. I've decided the stem down here, the left side, is just merges a little too much with the leaf behind it, so I'm going to just lighten that side with a little dirty green mix, some of the plantation pine and a little bit of the white. You can also lighten this other tulip stem. And I'm doing this along the left edge. Just go ahead and work all the stems on the tulips. We want them to have just kind of the effect that there's light shining from behind, so they have a little bit of a back glow. You can sign your name. Just pick a color that you like. I've used kind of a dirty pink. And then you can review again. Now I've decided, after reviewing one more time, that I want to add a little bit more of our coral color into the leaves. I want some accents on these leaves. So I'm just going to float some of the edges with the oranges and maybe a little bit of the pinks. Again, this is repeating our colors throughout the design. This is a very soft wash of color. You don't want it to be very strong. and it'll soften down even more when it dries. So use a little bit of the violet color, the vivid violet, just any of the colors that we've used in the tulips. So at this point, once you have everything to your liking, you can stop and let the painting dry very well and finish it with probably 2 to 3 coats of a varnish of your choice. I hope you've enjoyed this project and learned a little bit about painting from a photograph, and I hope you'll come back and paint with me again.